Good
success
afternoon.
with you.
Thank you for coming. Wow. Look at this. I haven't seen Louie! You're a little late, Lou, but I sit the night before this event and I drink heavily. No, I actually sit down and I start to write because I love to write, but no one ever gets to read my writing. It's hidden away somewhere. And I start to write what I'm going to say, and I get a couple of pages in and I said, this is just garbage. Because, you know, it's hard to work a room. When I look out upon this room, I see faces from different eras, truly for the first time since we've been doing the Hall of Fame, from literally 3 or 4 different eras of this radio station, including this guy over here, okay? Who, I know I tell this story every year, but I'm going to tell it anyhow. I'm a senior, 4th or 5th or 6th year senior. And I'm sitting in Moser's office, and he looks at me and he says, so now what? I said, well, after a successful career in radio or television, I'm going to sit in that seat right there. And that's exactly what happened. And it's one of the proudest moments of my life, coming to this station as a full-time director 18 years ago. Mostly because of the people in this room. The people I went to school with, like Fred Gaudelli. The people I had a class with, like Lew Scharfberg. God. And young people that I worked with, like Pete Bellotti and that whole group back there. Hi, guys. Because the best moments of my life were spent in this building, outside of my career and my family, although I'm glad my wife's not here to hear that. The birth of my children, I put that number 1 and then everything else.
Family first.
Family first, right. So every year I try to give you at least a brief overview of the station for the past year, kind of a year in review. There's not much to say. The station continues to do exactly what it's done for the last 10 years or so, with the addition of the rock show, almost 10 years ago, right? Worked at year 9, Bobby? Year 9, when the alumni came back in force and started doing programming for me. My community volunteers who do more programming for me. Bill Moser actually does programming for me now. He was a talk show host and now a podcaster for the station, because that's what we're into now, podcasting. And Joe Harnekamp, who does a show once a month. I'm just looking out over the room and I'm seeing alumni who come back to help us out. And that's great. That's wonderful. And some of you, many of you actually, also help me out financially, which I also appreciate very, very much. Because as Fred said in his speech this morning, in his talk at Hutton House, you know, I channel Moser occasionally. The kids don't know Moser that well, but sometimes I'll channel him and I said, do you want that? Yes, then go get some freaking money to buy it, and we'll buy it. And they do. They go out and they make money and they buy it. Or I beg the alumni and they give me some money and we were able to buy it. But I don't have Mrs. Abrams anymore. The Abrams family is no longer really attached to the station anymore. So if you know somebody very wealthy who wants to plop down a lot of money and put their name on the building, happy to take their cash. Brian. Anyway, I noticed Pete's wearing a blue tie today. I'm very impressed. Thank you, Pete.
Just for you.
Just for me. Thank you.
Yeah,
we had a difficult year in some respects, and I'll go into that now, and I don't want to go too deeply into it. I'm thankful that no one from the administration is here to listen to this part of the speech, but we've been in a transition for the last year. It's something we've been looking forward to for almost a decade, and that's our elevation to D1 sports at our university. It caused a lot of consternation among many, and it caused a lot of problems with students, many students of whom which were in my classes, athletes, some of which have had to transfer away, others that are just going to, you know, keep going to school here despite not being able to play sports, but the one thing that the university did do is they keep their scholarship until they graduate. And that's good. Have I looked forward to this D1 elevation? Yes. I think it's a great thing for the university. It's just a hard transition. And even harder for us, because now, in this time of decreased enrollment here at the university, I do have a very strong sports staff, which is calling the baseball game right now, the playoff baseball game, which we're winning, thank goodness. It's a struggle. It's a struggle because now we have to cover every single home game from every single sport. Not just the big 3, not just basketball, football, and baseball, but all of them. And all of our teams are very, very good. Our softball is away this weekend, playing in their tournament. Our women's lacrosse team, they lost yesterday. That put them out. Our men's team didn't make it. But it's a big part of the radio station has been the sports department. And 2 of the 3 people being honored today were sports directors at WCWP at one time or another. So when I look at this room, I see AI and I see BI. Before the internet and after the internet. You are after the internet, my friend. You were with me before the internet. Lew, you were in the Stone Age.
That's a telegraph.
You can tell it. Carrier pigeon. So, and it's interesting because in my 30 years of teaching part-time at this university, I've seen the change in people and who they are and what they do and how they've accomplished the goals that they want. And despite my differences maybe on how they go approach things or maybe how they go about things, I've never found a group of people I've respected more than the students who come through WCWP. There are some in my classes that don't come through WCWP I want to kick and tell them to go away. But again, and I'll just reiterate something Fred said earlier today, or paraphrase, WCWP is where things got done, where you learned how to do things. Many of us because of Bill Moser, some of you hopefully because of me. But that's the legacy that the station is. As Bill has said many times, and I'm sure he'll repeat it later today if he gets on microphone, we're just caretakers of that building, he and I, and the people who came before us. We just gave you an opportunity. We give students an opportunity, great students, to do great things. And that's all we really were about, and that's all I'm still about, and I hope that continues. The struggle to stay on the air and be part of a larger community is not easy anymore. Terrestrial radio is in its 3rd act, and or maybe dying slowly. But we're on the internet, we're into podcasting now, and we're not a radio station anymore. We are audio and video to a certain extent content facility, where we're teaching kids how to use audio, video, and web design to the best possible effect, because that's what's necessary today. And I know Fred's going to hire kids that are going to walk up and say, look, I got all this experience in school. They're going to say, what have you done for me? What can you do for me? And that's what we try to do here, give them a practical experience at the radio station in all those areas now, in all of them, because it's necessary. And everybody who does hiring, like Pete and like Fred, you know it. That's what you're looking for. So I hope we're still accomplishing the goals and we're accomplishing the mission of the radio station to make sure kids get through there and become good providers for their families by getting good jobs in our industry, which is getting bigger and bigger every day if you actually think about it. All the content places on the internet you can go, all the places that you can get good content. So anyway, if I've missed anybody in the room today, I'm sorry. I'm glad you're all here. I hope you'll enjoy the afternoon. I get to speak more later because 2 of the knuckleheads have decided to make me induct them. But if you know the format from the past, this is not a speech-giving event. The induction is a short period of time, and then they actually sit up here with your host today, who you'll meet in a couple of minutes. I'm going to play a video to get this whole thing started. Okay, so thanks for coming, first of all, and I hope you enjoy the afternoon.
Radio station WCWP, the voice of CW Post College, is on the air. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You are about to hear another first of CW Post College.
Today, we honor 3 more of WCWP's very finest, Lew Scharfberg, Fred Gaudelli, and Pete Bellotti. This is the 2019 WCWP Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Now your host, WCWP alum and Hall of Famer, Jeff Kroll.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is our 8th, this is hard to believe, our 8th induction ceremony, all right here in this very room. And today there'll be 3 more inductees when we're done today. There are currently 24 and even 24 members of our Hall of Fame. That's still a very exclusive club if you think back the history of the station. For those that don't know, and I know we have a lot of guests here who not familiar perhaps with this, the station started as a campus-only station all the way back in 1961, October of 61. So the station's in its 58th year. 24 people inducted in 58 years, you know, so those of you being inducted today, you're in still a very exclusive club. And I'm a proud member, and I welcome you to our little frat that we have going. What you'll hear, as Dan alluded to, you'll hear intros to our inductees, and the inductees will say a few words, and then we'll get up here and get your stories ready, and get your, some of which may even be true, some of which may not be, and we'll take it from there. Before we get started, I always like to acknowledge the Hall of Famers who are here today. We'll do ladies first. Pat Kroll is here today. He was inducted last year. And also here today, Neil Marks is here today. And we'll hear from Neil in a little while. I'm sure he has a story to tell about that guy. Okay. Joe Heineken, very happy that Joe can join us today. Bobby G, I know who's here. Where's Bobby? There's Bobby G, Bobby Guggenberg. Right back there. Very proud to have been in the same induction class with Bobby. Believe it, that's 4 years ago. Doesn't feel like it, does it? No. And this guy here, Mr. Moser. Are you familiar with Bill Moser? Bill Moser. So thank you very much for joining us today. And another guy I'd like to acknowledge before we start is our photographer/videographer, Mike Chimeri. And Mike really does deserve a big hand. Mike is at all of our station events, be it this or homecoming or any dinners we have, whatever we come up with. And Mike's the guy. He's going to take a zillion pictures today and a full video. He will turn that video around and post it. You'll be able to see it. I know there are always a number of people who can't be here today, but because they now live out of town or whatever, and they always take advantage and watch the video. So when you see the camera aimed at you, wave to everybody, hi, to all of our alumni. There's me. There you go. And of course, we always want to thank Dan Cox for making all this possible. One thing Dan didn't say is that when we're done today, the door to the radio station is open. If you haven't been there in a while or you haven't seen the place, come on over. It's right out the back. If you go up these stairs here at the back of the Tilles Center and turn left, the station is still where it's been since 1965 when the FM station went on the air. So come on over and see what it looks like these days in 2019. All right, Dan, you're waiving the usual entrance fee, right?
Yeah.
Free today only. Free, but come quickly. You may change your mind. Yeah, always, always. All right, so thank you for being with us. A few little refreshments. Stop over at the table along the way. I know I'm going over for my water right now as I hand it back to Dan Cox to introduce the first inductee of the 2019 Hall of Fame ceremony to you today.
I don't like public speaking. All right, the first inductee today, as I said, AI and BI. When I took over the station as director in 2001, the place was a mess. I gotta be really honest with you. As Bill could tell you, when he walked out in 1989, between that,
I was fired.
he was summarily dismissed, I know. Listen, yeah, but let me just go on record right now, because someone mentioned it earlier. I will be fired. There's only one director that was never fired. She left because they wouldn't give her tenure, because she was a professor. But I'll be fired eventually. I hope to retire, but we'll all be fired. We'll do something stupid. But anyway, in 1989, and between that time, 1989 and 2001, was a struggle, I think, for the station. I think, hey, Joe, I see you nodding your head. You spent a lot of time here. They took away hours. The university connected us with Long Island University's other campus in Southampton and made us repeat WPBX, which just became WLIU. So I walked into a staff that was a great group of kids, great group of students, but they seemed all very depressed because they weren't really allowed to do anything. And he's not here today, but Joe Sacco, who was my news director for a while back then, he sat in my office like after the first week I was there, and I said, "Why is everybody hiding on me?" He says, "We don't know what to do with you." That's exactly what he said. "We don't know what to do with you." I said, "You walk around here like, come on, why isn't this getting done? Why isn't this getting done?" Because we weren't allowed to. I said, "Well, tell them all, just do it. Just do what you gotta do." I said, "Unless you get us arrested, fired, or you light the place on fire, we're fine. Have fun, enjoy. All right, figure it out. Because I'm never gonna, make it hard on you." And at the time, we were not broadcasting a lot of sports on the air. And that upset me greatly. As a matter of fact, when I negotiated to become director, I sat across a table with the guy who was hiring me, and he said, "So if we don't put sports on the FM station, you're not going to take this job?" And I said, "Yes, that's a deal breaker." And I got up to leave the room, and he called me back, and we got sports back on the radio. That was really important. However, I didn't really have a good sports department or a sports director or anything. So I'm teaching this television class a semester later, and these two knuckleheads are sitting in it. And one of them was named Rob Hahn, who became a great play-by-play guy for us on basketball and football. And there was this guy sitting next to him who was real quiet and didn't say much. But I walked over to both of them and said, "You guys like sports?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "Then you're going to work at the radio station. Let's go." Tapped them on the shoulder, and over they came. Well, the quiet guy, in his own very stoic way, very strong way, became eventually a sports director and did an outstanding job of rebuilding a sports department which was left here by Travis Demers, who I need to mention, all right, because he wasn't getting there. Travis Demers was calling the Portland Trailblazers, Denver Nuggets, I'm not basketball.
Well, it's Portland.
It's Portland, but he's calling playoff basketball. Here's a kid who left, and I need to go on Travis for a second, but Travis left here to go call lacrosse games in Oregon for $25 a game. And over the last 10 years has become a powerhouse in the Pacific Northwest. And you followed him because he loved doing football and he did all the football games, but Pete came in and created the sports department from the dust and the ashes, along with what Travis had left here, which was a lot, but he was more of talent than he was management. And pretty evident. Hello. Is that Moser?
Yes.
God damn it, Moser. You can't take you anywhere.
It's the IRS.
Thank you. So Pete comes over to the station and he puts together an outstanding sports department. Puts together a staff that we start calling football every week. We start traveling to games again. We start doing basketball. And for a while, you were actually calling basketball in a program we had called the High School Basketball Game of the Week, where we actually went to high schools. Because we weren't doing enough sports. I didn't think we were doing enough. We went to high schools and did a high school game of the week. You called some of it. As a matter of fact, we called it your old high school, right? Yeah, we called one of our first games was at your old high school. And he had a blast doing that, and so did Rob, and that's how we built the sports department back up, because when I went to school, and I'll get to this later, there were a couple of great sports directors, starting with one of our inductees today. So to me, sports is the foundation on which I built the rest of the station, and I still to this day do that. I build it on that because, as you know, our biggest audience is Sunday afternoon, and listening to the football game, the alumni online, listening online and over the air. So, and on a personal note, I love this kid. I love him because he is that quiet man that John Wayne played in the movies. He's that quiet, stoic, strong, with great character and integrity. And one of the finest young men I've ever had an opportunity to not only teach, but to mentor and to see flourish in his chosen profession at CBS Radio and at WFAN, which, by the way, why did you get that job? Because you got an internship at WFAN, and you got a job right after it was over. Why? Because what we taught you at WCWP, that's what your boss told me. He said he had interns that didn't know half of what you knew. And that makes me proud, and I think it makes everybody in this room proud. So ladies and gentlemen, the latest inductee into the WCWP Hall of Fame, my good friend, Peter Bellotti, Jr. Gotta take a picture, you know.
Yeah, I know.
And Jeff is
We're tight.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
take a seat.
Oh, all right.
Am I coming up? You're up, Jeff. All right. I don't do interviews.
Yep, I know. I heard that story once.
Hey, Dan.
By the way, Dan and I clearly didn't coordinate our jackets.
Well, his is closer to the new LIU blue than
That's what we were discussing.
I'm a rebel. I would have wore green, but you know.
With this upgrade to D1 Sports, and I know you're so into sports, Pete, the colors of the school are changing from the old green and gold. They're taking blue, which they say is from Brooklyn, although I know some folks down there who are, they don't actually believe that. And the gold from Post being, you know, the green and gold for all these years. And it's going to be a powdery light blue, so it's, one of us has the right jacket on. We'll find out whenever they finally come out with this logo that they keep promising. But Pete, it's good. You know, I met you first when we came back. There was there's a gap, and Mr. Moser alluded to the fact, I know I can't say Mr. Moser, Bill alluded to the fact that he was summarily dismissed in 1989. And the alumni, we had been doing these reunions since the late 70s. So every year we would gather for homecoming and do all that. But when Bill left, we didn't see any reason to come back. So we disappeared for a good stretch of years. And it was really just before Dan took over. There was kind of a kumbaya moment, I guess.
It's like the non-Lorne Michael years on Saturday Night Live.
Right. That's a good, that's the sort of thing. Yeah. And so we came back in, and you were a student in those days, and I remember you from those days as we started to get back involved in WCWP. But before we get to the questions and all that, we always have our inductees say a few words about their experiences and what today means.
I wouldn't be where I am at CBS Sports Radio and WFAN without WCWP. And that group back there. And Craig and all the people I work with. When I came here, I saw a group that had a chip on their shoulder. Saw a group that had passion. And that's what you need in this business. A lot of passion. Especially the times when you're working graveyard shift, you're working an overnight, you're working for bad money. And that group back there had the passion. And I learned from them. And Greg Stern, myself, Jay, we took over after they graduated and went on to just do something we loved. And that's sports and radio. Dan always said this, and it always sticks in my mind. If radio were hard, he wouldn't be doing it. And it sticks in my mind every day, especially when now I'm in a role where I'm interviewing part-timers and interns, and I think about just that statement. This is supposed to be fun. And I learned the aesthetics and everything from here, from Dan and from Joe Manfredi back there. Those two love this station more than anybody. And I owe my career to them. And I met Jeff, and I met everybody along the way, and the tradition here is something we wanted to capture with the Alumni Association and with the Hall of Fame. And all these people in the room today show our tradition. Yeah, everyone maybe have better equipment or whatnot, but we had the heart. And we always have the heart. Our station has the heart. And I wouldn't be at Post or wherever the LIU Post, I wouldn't be here without my family. My mom and dad, who saw the look on my face when we were touring NASA Community College. They knew I wanted to be here, and they knew I wanted to be in broadcasting, and they sacrificed, and they helped me come here. And I just owe my life to them. I love them. And my wife, Bridget, most caring person in the world. She's what I call the metronome. She just is the voice of reason. I love her very much. And her family, and my new family, and my friends. Just thank you very much.
You know, Pete, something Dan said during his introduction struck me. He was talking about your first internship with WFAN. I'd like you to talk about that, if you will. But it does remind me, this has been an ongoing thing, the history of the radio station. In my day, and you know, admittedly a lot older, but under Bill Moser, we learned so much here that when we went into stations for jobs, when they heard you were from WCWP, you were in, perhaps over people from other places, because we were turning out a tremendous number back in the 70s when I was here, and obviously continued into the 80s and all that. So it's good to hear that that's still going on in the 2000s. But so what did you do with your very first internship?
Well, my first internship was in the newsroom at WFAN. First day, I see Chris Russo and Mike Francesa walk out of the studio, just doing a show, and I'm just sitting there watching it all transpire, and they were caricatures of themselves. That first day, I just sat around, and I was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to be doing anything? Yeah, you're going to be working with audio, and eventually, as we went along, I started cutting highlights and actualities from the games, and learning. The big thing with those internships, and I say it to people that are coming in, is sit and learn and observe. Observe what's going on. A lot of years of tradition, a lot of years of work have gone into a lot of these careers. And that's what I did. I just sat there and I observed. I took it all in. Steve Summers would always say that we're always learning. We're always absorbing, and we're always a sponge. And if you're not doing that, you're doing something wrong. So every time from then on, I went on to become a producer, and it was actually from the IMUS scenario, the whole IMUS firing at WFAN. They needed to hire some new producers, and I got hired full time about 10 months after my internship started as a full-time producer. And I always thought about this place when I got hired as a producer. So I would work with Steve Summers and went on to work with Mike Francesa for a couple of years, one of the greatest 2.5 years of my life in broadcasting. I learned so much from a man who's done it for 30 years.
And we'd see you every day on the Yes Network and waving. And they take a shot at the control.
And on social media, too, you know. But yeah, those first couple of years at WFAN, I learned so much, and from Steve and from Mike, and then we moved, and then
So you advanced from IMUS's firing, and it's full circle. I used to work with IMUS back in the NBC days, so there you go, we have a connection.
Never met IMUS, but they moved all their guys out.
And then FAN is connected with CBS, and as CBS Radio expanded their sports network, that we still don't really hear here in New York, but the CBS network, the national network, so then you got involved in that. I know you were producing Giants pre- and post-game shows.
Yes,
when FAN had the Giants. Well, they still have the Giants.
That's right. Off of the work I did with Mike, I started doing work for the Giants, New York Giants, and I produced the pre-game and post-game shows out at MetLife Stadium. And it's just a great learning experience to be around a live broadcast. And we did a lot of live broadcasts here, and that's where it all started. I keep going back to that, but went on to work with the Giants, 7+ years doing that stuff, and really just a great thrill. You know.
And they won some games in those days. They, I think they need you back to do that. Maybe they'd start winning again. Have you met, did you meet Nick Mattina today?
Yes, I did.
Nick is our
Current sports director at the radio station, and Nick just got an internship for the summer at WFAN. So you've got to make sure you commiserate over there.
I signed him up. I interviewed Nick.
Oh, okay, great.
I interviewed Nick. We interviewed about 14 people. And what were you saying about the tradition of WCWP coming through professional stations. And Nick came in, was one of our first interviews. I interviewed him, and then we had our whole staff interview him. Came across as a very respectable man, and I knew what he had from my time here, and the experience he had, and he's going to do a great job for WFAN and for CBS Sports Radio as well. But yeah, that's coming full circle. That was one of my first intern classes I interviewed, and ended up being one of them was Nick Patina.
Very good. Very good. Best of luck to Nick. WFAN this summer and going forward as well. All right, I think it's time for, it almost, sometimes it's, you know, you've been to these, sometimes turns into a bit of a roast.
That's right.
We'll probably get a couple of stories, maybe some of which are true, maybe at least partially true. But anybody would like to say hi to Pete, tell a story, something like that? Here you go. The floor is open.
I see one
Yes,
guy.
we're looking at your group there in the back.
Well, you didn't drink, you didn't smoke.
So he was bored then.
But it's just been a great time, and I really appreciate everybody and what they did for my career, and I hope I had some type of impact here to where the future can look at what I did.
And it's nice, you know, Pete giving back to the station like that, getting internships for people and coming out here through the years, working with various people in sports departments, you know, through the years we need to have time, and I like to do that too. I help out doing that too. And it's great to help that tradition continue so that these guys and gals can go out and continue that reputation of WCWP out in the broadcasting world.
Of course.
It should be noted that Peter also ran the Alumni Association for a while and also was the chair of that Hall of Fame committee for a few years. So his involvement has not just been to give us opportunities for our students, but also he gives back to the station directly.
That's it. Yes, indeed. That does deserve a round of applause.
No, nobody has a Pete Bellotti. Oh, it had to be. I knew Jay. Jay would have to
I knew
come
one of them
through.
would. Come on, Jay. You know radio, you gotta take a mic.
Or come on up here. Come on. Whatever you like.
I'll stay here. But I remember many years ago, Pete knows the story I'm about to tell. I was in the studio, I was about to do my Sunday show, and I get preempted by this guy over here in sports, telling me like 10 minutes before my show's about to start that I'm canceled for the day. And I was pissed, I'm yelling at him, I remember, and I was like, you gotta tell me this stuff, what's going on? And since that time though, we became the greatest of friends, and I'm really truly grateful for that friendship, for the things that he's taught me. He's really gotten me involved when he wasn't only a sports director, but he was the program director at WCWP after I graduated, and he pulled me in for some special events that the station was doing. I remember we had some kind of event over here at the Tilles Center and brought me in to, help them out. And he and I, we always lend each other an ear. We help each other out. And Pete is just that guy. Pete's the guy that you can call him, you can text him any time of day, any time of night, and he's always there for you. And it just shows his character. He's the best.
Well, that's good. Since you have the experience, you can tell him he's canceled tomorrow, all right?
Tomorrow, preempted.
No. You're on.
That story is great because I was just started as a sports director, and I had no idea about preemptions and shows, and I didn't know if I handled that, if that was me. I go in and Jay's getting ready to do the Disco and Funk King show, getting ready to play some Ain't No Stopping Us Now, and I'm coming in with this sports broadcast and basically preempting them. And from then on, we just became good friends. And Jay is one of the foundation of the station, and Grandfather Rock as well, and everyone that I've mentioned before. And he's just one of those guys that's always there for the station, and I appreciate his friendship.
All right, who else is ready to step forward with a story or two? There we go. Joe Manfredi.
Not necessarily a question, but more of a statement. I do have one question. more of a statement. And you said something really nice earlier about, Dad and I helping you in your career, people in this room helping you in life. And speaking as another station manager, we just mentioned, we don't see a lot of students like you. A lot of people that are as engaged as you. A lot of people that don't have those leadership skills and ability, those that demonstrate what it's like to be a professional in the business and have compassion and understanding and patience. And you emulate that. So in turn, you made us want to be better managers, and we took pride in the fact that you were that kind of person. You still are. Because, a lot of people in the room may not know I still work with Peter through a lot of other avenues. And now he's actually the supervisor for some of my students and the like. So there's very few Peter Bellottis in this industry. And the fact that I had the ability to also teach you when you were at the station when I was there, those kinds of things. The impact you make on the people in the room, that's why we're here. So if anything, congratulations to you on your continuing journey just to be the person you are and all the successes and the legacy that you leave and continue to leave behind here and at other stations and at CBS. I mean, congratulations. I mean that a lot. Thank you. You deserve it.
Thank you very much.
My question is, what is your fondest memory of WCWP? If you had to
Throwing Jay off the air, I think.
That was one of the greatest moments of my life. No, fondest memory. You see, for me, it's an experience. It's not so much one particular thing. It's the experience of coming in and seeing Dan, seeing you, and working with my friends. Working with my friends. That was working the games, working remotes we did, Bar Beach for fireworks, coordinating that. That actually, I will say, Mike Chimeri right here, right, was one of the hosts. We did a fireworks show Memorial Day. Mike Chimeri right here. He was one of the hosts, and I put him with somebody that I never thought he would be able to work with. Eli WCWP from the Lockdown, from our hip hop genre, right? And Mike is jazz, David Sanborn, David Benoit, all of them. And it was probably the best combination that we had. But we tried things. We tried things, and Mike was very instrumental in a lot of us and just being a part of the station.
Yeah, that was a fun experience.
It was, that was the one thing I go to, is we just tried things. We really were creative and tried to be something that we really couldn't do when we would go into the professional world, because you have restrictions, but this is more of your chance to just see who you are. And that was one day that we really tried things, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Just the whole experience. There's really not one time I can pinpoint on, but the whole experience being there. That's pretty much what I go to. Thanks, Mike.
All right, very good. Pete Bellotti.
Thank you.
I won't stand up. I sit up there, but I won't stand up there. All right, our next inductee I've been asked to introduce to you. Lew Scharfberg entered the station. Lewis M., I have to throw in Lewis. Lewis M. Scharfberg walked into the station the fall of 1975. And Lewis will tell you that I told him to change his name to Lew. Now, I told him he had to change his name to Lew to say on the radio. I don't remember doing that, but it does sound like something I would have done in those days. That does sound like me back then, yeah. Lew was one of those eager beavers who came into the station and wanted to learn. He wanted to learn everything and anything in news and in the music department. And as Pete was a sports director, and we're going to have another sports director introduced to you after, and I was a sports director at the time that he walked in. He didn't want to do sports, but he was interested in news and, of course, our weekend music format. And Lew worked his way up quickly through the ranks. And it always impressed me that there are different types of people who come into the radio station. There are those that really want to go for it. And there are those that want to hang around a radio station, they like to help out, they like to do something, but they don't really want to take charge. Lew wanted to lead. Lew wanted to be that guy.
Leading it, he ended up doing that, and doing that very well. Drove some people nuts as he did it, but he did so. And that always impressed me. And so the thing is, for every different grouping, for every 4, 5, 6 year period of time as there's a turnover at the station,
there are certain people that you feel are the key cogs at the station during that era. I mean, I can name them from when I was when I broke in. But as I saw things from the mid and late 70s, this was a very key cog at WCWP, and those are the folks that I believe we should be honoring here, the people without whom the station would have been quite different through those years, and then handed it off to those going forward. In his case, leading into the 80s, as he graduated in, was it 78 is when he graduated? Yes, if I just turned around and looked, I'd see. So I would like to introduce to you the next member of the WCWP Hall of Fame, Lew Scharfberg. Come on up, and while you start to speak, I'm just going to refill my water cup. I'll be right back.
Okay. I thought my rider said I'd have steps and a lectern. Don't be so formal. Yeah, don't worry, you can go to the bathroom because I'll still be here when you get back. I wrote a whole bunch of stuff, and I wanted to do it informally, but when you get my age, you don't remember as much as you used to. So,
hold that thing up to your mouth, Lew, so we can hear.
How about a lapel mic? I really got to get this right. Thanks all of you for being here, especially my son Daniel, my brother Ed, and my sister-in-law Mary Lee. Thank you all for this honor. Congratulations to my fellow inductees, Pete and Fred. I just want to take a few moments, it's more than a few moments, I'm lying, to share some of the great memories I had at WCWP. And I do apologize in advance to many of you because some of the words or stories I tell reference stuff that happened back in the 70s, and you may not know what I'm talking about, but you can use that Google machine on your phones to figure out what I'm talking about. So, I actually learned more at WCWP than I did at all the buildings on this campus. And I did graduate in 4 years. I just want to let everybody know that. I should get some kind of award for that. You know, WCWP was a place not only taught radio, but it taught us about how an organization functioned. The process we went through brought out the best in us and shaped us to be professionals. The upper class men and women at the station mentored the younger ones. You've heard that over and over today. It was a responsibility that was expected of you if you wanted to be a leader in the station. It kind of reminds me of a Hebrew phrase, L'dor v'dor. That means from generation to generation. And that's what WCWP was all about. It meant teaching, it meant assisting with job opportunities, it meant internships. It meant introducing people to people at radio stations or sometimes television stations, whatever. And it gave the students an opportunity to learn. Told you I'd still be here. Not Jeff. I clearly remember I was sitting at the console, and you were over my left shoulder, and you were teaching me over and over, you were drilling me how to say my W's correctly. Jeff was big on W's. Right?
Now, Bill was big on W's, which meant we were all big on W's. Fred will go into that in a little while.
But you know what? you know, W. Schmuckle, you already told the story I was going to tell now about changing my identity. So, but there was, you know, and you mentioned too, there was a bunch of years where I self-exiled myself from the station. I wasn't happy with some of the things that the LIU and Post administration did. We talked about it. Bill's situation was one of them, but you brought me back, and I thank you for that. I really do appreciate it. So many more little moments. Oh, I can see the top of the tower from here.
No, that's a flagpole.
That's just no. What's that? Or is that the AT&T thing?
It's the Tilles Center flagpole.
No, above there. That's the tower or something.
Oh, is that the in the far distance? Yes, we can just take out the top. Unfortunately, the flagpole is high.
The type of piece of paper of 24 point, but you can see that.
I'm farsighted here.
Yeah.
So it's a half moon up there.
Yeah. Okay. So many moments. Mike Phillips teaching me how to talk up songs without a hot clock. He always said, use the beat, just tap your feet. And, you know, and Danny, I have to do that now at homecoming because there's no hot clock in that studio. So, I remember, I don't know if it was Alan Boritz or Harry Lowenthal, the late Bill Eberhardt, taught me what a diode was. Now, how many people know what a diode is? Ooh, more than I expected. It's a little piece of, Freddie, you know what a diode is? Very good. It's a little piece of electronic equipment. It's like a semiconductor that only lets electric current flow in one direction, correct?
Light emitting diode.
Okay, right, that's one of them. So, I just want to say, whichever guy taught me that, you'd be very proud to know that after 40-something years, I finally found a way to use diode in a sentence. So, Pat, I remember when you and Joanne took on that grand responsibility of organizing that storage lockup better known as the music library. But you never solved one of WCWP's biggest mysteries.
Ken Franklin.
Yep. We had a guy named Ken Franklin, Midnight Progressive. He used to write record reviews, but on the inside of the album jacket, not on the outside, on the inside of an album jacket. If anybody needs to know what an album jacket is, I'll explain it later. But he wrote it all the way on the inside. Never could figure out, right?
Great talent, dude.
It was. You imagine how it had to be one of those mini golf pencils that were really, Neil, you were like a big brother to me, and we bickered a lot. But over time, I think we've come to appreciate our friendship. Absolutely. And then there's Mozart. Dale, I learned so much from you. You know, you taught me about authority, or was it authoritarianism? No matter.
No, it was how to be a bully.
That's Danny clapping back.
How to be a bully?
Yeah.
I appreciate all that you taught me, and I, you know, used it throughout my life. And I wouldn't be remiss if I didn't mention one more name. Mrs. G. Ann Gaffney was one of the nicest people you would ever meet. She was always smiling at you through that box office window when you walked into the station. So, you know, as I was putting my thoughts together for this, there was, and we mentioned it several times here, so many alumni of WCWP have gone on to be tops in their field. You know, they may be behind the scenes, but they're still tops in their field, in radio, in other communication-related genres, or, Neil, you went into finance. Well, you always wanted to go into finance. But, you know, WCWP instilled something in you. It instilled to be your best. I mean, you know, I was thinking, Fred, I was thinking of you. Think about this. There are very few Americans who've had their work product seen by more folks around the globe than Fred. Just think about that. Wow. So, let me just close with two of my most memorable moments, so you don't have to ask me that. It was August 16th, 1977. What?
7:22 p.m.
Wow. Hey, I can't hear as well.
Parroting what he was saying.
Oh. I was sitting at the desk in the newsroom doing some work. Right next to the desk was the Associated Press teletype machine. You know, back in the day, we didn't have no stinking internet. All right, if we wanted news from the world and nation, we got it from wire services like Associated Press and UPI and Reuters, and they would gather dispatches from around the world into their New York headquarters, and they sent this data out via telephone lines to radio and television stations around the country. And this AP machine, it was like half the size of a refrigerator, and it was noisy. Well, and it also had, you know what, it had a little bell on it that rang about 10 times if there was a bulletin, so whoever was in there knew, hey, something important is going on. Well, that day I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, that machine, the bell rang, it must have been 100 times. The machine was convulsing. So I can sum up the situation in one sentence, what was going on. I knew where I was when Elvis died. I mean, some people, 2 generations after me, that wouldn't mean anything, but that meant something to me, meant something to me. And my last story is very ironic, because although it has something to do with WCWP, it has more to do with where you're all sitting right now, right here. See, before the Tilles Center, there was another performance hall called the Dome, the CW Post Dome. Can I go like that? No, I go like that. That's why I didn't go into radio, folks. And during winter break of 77, 78, I was program director at the station. One of my responsibilities was making sure all the air shifts are filled. And, you know, it was pretty tough during the winter break because all the dorm students, they went home. The commuter students, well, a lot of them were on vacation too. So there was a Friday night shift that had to be filled, and then the station went off at midnight, and then at 8 a.m. it had to sign on again on Saturday. Luckily, there was one guy, you know where this is going, there was one guy who always was available for an air shift. Even though he had a job, he was a bon vivant around town, and he also was part owner of a bar in Bayside, wasn't he, Bill? Yeah. John Fox. Yeah. And so John did a show on Friday night and said, he told me beforehand, don't worry, Lou, I'm going to do the Friday night shift for you, then I'm going to sleep in the back room of the station. And I'll do Saturday morning.
But why did he have to sleep in the back? Because there was a blizzard moving in.
Well, yeah, it's been snowing all week, right. But he said, don't worry. Yeah. And let me tell you, the back of the station is, 50 feet from this building or 50 feet from what the dome was. Okay? It wasn't that far. So he did the show Friday night. Saturday morning, I wake up between 6 and 7 o'clock. And I turn on the TV because I used to like to watch the news before my cartoons, right, Ed? So, imagine my surprise and shock when all the New York stations are reporting from CW Post. What's going on? The dome collapsed. Went down because of the snow that was
weight of the worst blizzard we had had in many years at that point.
So,
blizzard of 78.
So I said, oh boy, I better call John. I mean, let me call the hotline. And I don't know, Danny, did I remember the number right, 299-2628? Was that the hotline?
It was one of the numbers.
Yeah, yeah.
2626.
That was the regular line. 2628 was the hotline. So I called, I'm worried about John. Building collapse 50 feet away. So phone rang several times. Finally, another voice gets on the phone. It's John. Oh, welcome up. I said, John, the dome collapsed. What are you talking about? I said, John, the dome collapsed. No, it didn't. I said, John, I'm watching it on TV. The dome collapsed. Lou, I've been here all night, and the dome didn't collapse. I didn't hear a thing. I said, John, look out the window. So I wait a few seconds, and then I hear words that are as clear to me today as they were 41 years ago. Unfortunately, I cannot repeat them to this audience. If you want to know what they were, see me afterwards with a valid ID, and I'll show it to you. Finally, a wise man once told me, just in case there's anybody out there with Arbitron diaries, always say the calls before you clip the mic. So, thank you, WCWP.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, the floor is open. We can hold our ears now. Uh-oh.
First in line.
First in line is your boss.
What are those hanging on your neck?
Bill Moser, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, shoppers. Welcome to Walmart at aisle 9,999. Look, I got a few things to say. Okay, you're gonna have to.
Do they serve dinner?
Forget it. I got things to do. Book a room, because by the time I get through with this, we'll be here through the night. One day I come into the station, and Mrs. Gaffney is sitting behind the door, the window there, and she has got this face on. And I said, Ann, what's going on? She said, Lew is in your office. Oh, okay, what's he doing in there? Well, he's waiting for you. Okay. So I go in the office, and Lew is sitting at my desk, in my chair. And he's smoking a cigar.
Smoking a cigar?
Yeah. He smoked those Tiparillos back in the day. Those skinny cigars. So, Lew says to me,
do you work for the administration?
It's on the QT. I'm working undercover now, but I'm retired. So Lew's in my chair, and Lew ushers me in, and he says, have a seat. Well, you know those 3 seats in my office are always filled with piles of crap.
Right.
Piles and piles of...
I'm going to read it someday, you said.
Yeah, right. So there's one chair there, and I sit down, and Lew looks at me, and he points at me, and he said, you got to fire that Mark Silver guy. And I said, what do you mean? He said, he's got to go. And I said, well, Lew, you have to understand, Mark Silver's business was very, very generous to the station. They bought us a couple of card machines. Hey, pay attention here.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who Mark Silver was. Let's see if he's on my list. Wait a minute.
Yeah, he's on your list. All right, so Mark Silver is...
Is he on my list?
You are losing it. So he says, either you go or...
Oh, wait a minute.
What?
You're getting old, man. Danny just gave me the high sign. Tell me what's really going on.
What do you mean what's going on?
Silver wasn't here when he was in school.
Yeah.
I'm the one who asked you to fire Mark Silver.
If you need a writer, I'll arrange one for you, Bill. I have no idea what he's talking about.
Okay, so it was Dan Cox.
Sounds like a great story. We got to hear the end. We got to hear
All right.
I kept saying, what is he talking about?
We got to hear the
Was
end.
he really smoking a cigar?
Yeah, I never smoked this.
Listen, I've got your medication.
The funny part about that story that you're telling about me, because I'll never be inducted into this Hall of Fame, is that we had the largest screaming fight that day. There were students in the lobby, and they called public safety. Oh, we had the biggest battle we ever had that day.
Well, considering how vocal Mr. Scharfberg can
You
get...
confused me with him. Because I was always calm, remember?
Well, there's one off my bucket list, being confused with Dan Cox.
Well, whatever.
But was he fired?
Boy, did I just blunt all his other stories he was going to tell now.
All right, so who got fired? All right, so Lew says...
Lou's still talking.
Lew says to Ann Gaffney, the station secretary at the time, for those who don't know who she is, Lew says, get Steinberg on the phone.
Oh, I might have said that once or twice.
So Lew gets on the phone with Dr. Steinberg, and he says, I want you to fire Moser.
No, that...
Yes, you did.
No, I never spoke to Steinberg.
And the rest is...
I refuse to speak to Steinberg.
You got me fired. The rest is history. Just kidding, folks.
I know.
Do you have a real one?
I said you have to book a room. Now, Lew was amazing. Lew had the amazing ability actually to corral people into doing things that they didn't want to do, but God forbid that you crossed Lew's path. You were on his big S list.
I still got it in my pocket here.
I'm on the list. Now I'm at the top of the list.
1974.
Now I'm at the top of the list. All right, can I go now?
Yeah.
Finished? All right.
Go Wolves.
Hey, Dan, thank you for the
I just want to
Well, who got fired, though? That's what
I got fired! Oh, this is like an old age home here.
So, Lew, Neil, I think this was you.
I see this is going to be a constant theme now. People know that they shouldn't tell stories about me if they make stuff up there.
Sorry, Bill, it was a hanging curveball. So,
You know there was a bunch of me running around back in the 70s.
yeah. So, quick story about Lew. So I was the music director, maybe after Jeff, and then I turned it over to Lew. With a little trepidation.
No, Lew was never Lew was never music.
Whatever.
See, again with the lies. Again with these people that are telling lies about me. Don't believe a word they say. No collusion, no obstruction.
So, but Lew was program director. Lew is kind of in charge of all the music and everything. So he was doing shows, I was doing shows. Even after I was no longer top 40 music director, I was doing shows. And since I had run it, and since I had been there longer, I felt a sense of responsibility, and also maybe a sense that I knew what was right. And even though you were kind of new to running things, you probably didn't know it as well as I did. And we had an argument once in the studio by the window, and as many discussions with Lew did, they escalated, as you referred to earlier. And I got to sometimes with Lew, you get to the point where words don't work anymore, and I turned toward physicality, and I picked you up and threw you out the emergency door on the side, which worked well. And it ended the discussion for then. I think we had a turbulent relationship during that time, but I've learned to love you over the last 30 years.
Yeah, buddy.
And I'm so proud to have you in the group, and you deserve it.
Thank you.
We did take things seriously.
Yeah, I have one thing to say about Lew.
Go ahead.
I'm probably the only person in the room who had you as a professor. Uh-oh. You did too? God, he was awful. Right?
But did you learn?
Listen, if this were after the internet, your rate my professor would be 0.
Yeah, well, you noticed when I left, when that internet started.
I think the most frustrating part of his class was he would do B's and G's. Remember?
Right, bad and good.
Bad and
Kept it simple.
It was kindergarten. The man ran a kindergarten class, and I was paying, well, I wasn't paying, I hate to tell you guys who are going to school here today what I paid per semester, but...
You can imagine what I paid.
Yeah. But yeah, the B's and G's were annoying. They didn't make any sense to me, and the grade you gave me sucked, so bite it, all right?
One thing, I just want to,
hold on a second.
your son is going to speak here in a minute, but I want to say, you know, all three of our inductees today use their experiences at WCWP to go on, to some extent, in the field. Pete, we heard about his experiences, and you'll hear Fred's coming up, of course. But Lew didn't actually work for a radio station per se, but yet you stayed in broadcasting to an extent throughout.
Right. I look at it this way. I never worked in a commercial radio station.
Right.
I worked in a professional radio station. You know, and I went into cable television.
Cable television,
several months after I graduated. I've been in cable now for 40-something years.
Right. So he did use his experiences at WCWP to stay in the industry per se. So I wanted to get that across. Any other stories for our dear Mr. Scharfberg?
I don't know if he wants to say something.
All right, here we go. It's Lew's son. Here we go.
He's been my dad for about 22 years, and all these years I can tell you he's given me 3 things. 1, a massive headache. 2, a great taste in music. And 3, inspiration to keep going on my track. I love the guy, and I don't know where I'd be without him. I never went to Post, but I can imagine that he's an inspiration to all of us. Or a headache, or both. I love you, Dad.
Thank you, Dan. I love you. And for all of you that needed, there are aspirin on the refreshments.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Lewis. Oh, we have one more?
You did throw a chair at me in the newsroom once. Oh my God.
Did I hit you? I haven't missed.
No, but you got, what happened when we got suspended? You got suspended. Bill suspended you.
Many times.
Well, that was a severe suspension.
All of us got suspended for something.
Yeah, but that was a bad one, because I really played it up to get you, like, you know.
Oh. You think like, you know, like roughing the passer type thing.
I'm still on suspension.
Lew Scharfberg.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. I mean, you really gotta get steps to this thing. I gotta know.
I know. Here you go. You can hold it. It's your plaque. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Very good.
Wait, then you got one? Okay, wait.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Our final inductee of the day, Dan Cox will introduce.
Yes. You ready?
I'm ready.
After a failed attempt at college, my father told me to go get a job. I got a job at the New York Telephone Company, overnights, opening and processing bills. So I was frustrated. A friend of mine and I, he didn't get thrown out, he finished junior college, decided that summer that we would try to find another place to go to school. So we listened to all the local public radio stations and college radio stations, and I called them and I said, I found one that really sucks, we need to go there. And I came to WCWP. We were brash, we were arrogant, we were young. But what impressed me most when I got to WCWP in the fall of 1981 was a group of people who were already there, doing amazing things. Not on the music side, because that needed to be fixed, Bill, and you know that. But particularly on the news and sports side, there was some excellent work being, and I was new, I was green, but I was, as Bill will tell you, a little bit arrogant. I had a yelling fight with him about firing a person, which you gave Lew credit for, and I like that story. But the beauty of coming in the fall is that football starts, and I love football. I like the football that's played overseas, American football, not so much. But I do love going to the games. And moreover, I had to work on Saturdays, so I would listen to the games. And, you know, you listen to sports radio, and you listen to listen to the professionals, and you listen to, and you say to yourself, can I do that? Can I do that? Now, he'll tell you he couldn't do that, and that's why he became a producer. But I've listened to some of his stuff, and actually, you're going to get a little bit of a surprise later. Fred Gaudelli was great. Called a great game. So much so that when I convinced Bill to let Mark and I do the weekend schedule, he was the one thing I didn't want to get rid of, was football. I said, let's get rid of everything and just play music, and he said, no. I said to Mark, we're keeping football, because it's important, because we had great people doing it. And you were the sports director at the time, and actually Lori White, I think, was your predecessor. I worked with her. Successor. Yeah, she was a successor, I'm sorry. And she was terrific, and you obviously trained her, because she did a great job managing the department after you left. But one of the things that impressed me about Fred was that it wasn't just college radio he was good at. He's been good at everything he's done for the last 38 years. There hasn't been a thing this man has not accomplished. I could go through the list, and it's exciting, but, you know, it's a long, long list of accomplishments. And if I did that, then you wouldn't be able to hear what he has to say. I'd be here all night. I could talk about the 20-plus Emmys. I could talk about the Super Bowls. I could talk about, as already been pointed out, and you stole my line, the work that this man does has been seen by more people on planet Earth than anything else. Wrap your head around that for a minute. The content that he produces has been seen by more people on this planet than anything else. That's insane. That takes incredible talent, incredible insight, incredible innovation, which he's certainly been. If you were lucky enough to come to the Hutton House lecture this morning, you learned a lot about what Fred has done in his career. And I hope, Jeff, and you'll cover it when you talk with him. But now correct me if I'm wrong, you did work for Sports Phone for a little while.
I did not.
You did? Okay. All right, because I remember calling Sports Phone, I thought I heard your voice. That's what you, what's that?
My director did.
Your director did, right? Yeah. But if anybody remembers, 976-1414 or whatever, 1212 or 1313. I think 1212 was weather. But yeah, I mean, and when he tells the story, and I'll start it a little bit, he worked in the mailroom at ESPN and worked his way up to be one of the giants of our industry. The entertainment industry, the sports entertainment industry, you want to call it that. And I was humbled when he said, Dan, you can induct me. I'm like, what the hell am I going to say? I'm not going to go to your bio and just read it, but that's not what it is. He will tell you that he sacrificed a lot to be where he is. And we're all better for it because we are the beneficiaries of the work that he's done, especially if you're a sports fan. But not only if you're a sports fan, but if you're a media fan, if you're a fan of what we do, he took it to new levels in his career. And he's a giant. And we're very fortunate to be able to say, I love saying it. Hey, Fred, you know, your name comes up at every open house. You know, we're going D1. You know who, you ever watch Sunday Night Football? Yeah, that's one of ours. And their eyes light up, and the parents especially, their eyes light up. And sometimes we get them to sign on the dotted line and they come to school here. And that shows the power of this man. And it extends out to this entire group here because he was here back in the early 80s, and we build on everything that we try to build on here. Pete Bellotti is a product of because Fred Gaudelli was here. Travis Demers is a product of because Fred Gaudelli was here. It's just a legacy that this radio station will take until, at least I'm gone, at least when the world ends. Fred Gaudelli is a giant. I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I think he should say it on his own. Ladies and gentlemen, Hall of Fame inductee, Fred Gaudelli. Yeah, I know this doesn't really match an Emmy, but you know, it's going to go right next. It's going to go right next to him.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
All right, thank you, man. All yours. Yeah.
All right, this is a great kick for us to have Fred here today. Fred has come out at times. I know you've spoken to students through the years, and every time you've been out for one reason or another, my wife and I have been away on a trip. I've missed every one of those get-togethers because I do hang out with the guys in the sports department today. And so it's great to have you here and great to catch up with you again. I hate to make you repeat yourself, but what you said this morning at the gathering over there in Humanities, Fred talked about his beginnings in the industry, and you talked about first your internship, which we were just saying earlier, we're excited for current students getting those, and how that then led, and then your foot in the door at ESPN, but especially for Mr. Moser's benefit, because he got there late this morning. What WCWP has meant to your career?
Well, I wish you would have been there, but when I think about, you know, my 4 years here, I think much more about the radio station than I do about, you know, anything I learned in a classroom. Not to put down the school or anything like that, but you don't really know what to expect when you get into the professional world. But when I came to WCWP, first of all, the sports department was a powerhouse. Danny Regan ran the sports department. We had a lot of people working in sports, and it was hard to get on the air. And they were all really good, and they've all gone on to do great things. I mean, Danny's a great director, and there was more than Danny. But Bill, you know, was really, he treated you like you were in a professional atmosphere. Those call letters, I said it this morning, whenever I enunciate the W, I make sure it's W because Bill is still in the back of my head, WCWP. And it was a big deal, and I think it took me a month to get on the radio station until I had it exactly right. And, you know, my voice was a little bit different back then, and it took me a while. But, you know, I learned about responsibility, I learned about accountability, I learned about how to get things you really want. No one's going to hand it to you. You have to go out and, in our case, raise the money and get what you needed. And it really just set me on the course. So when I got my first job, my first professional job was ESPN, I pretty much knew what to expect, and I knew how to handle myself, and I knew that no one was going to like powder my ass or anything like that. So I really, you know, Bill was a huge part of that. The whole station was that way, and I think about the people that were there when I was there. I mentioned Danny Regan, Cosmo Leone, who had a great career as a program director in Iowa, is now in Minneapolis, and I get to see him every time I do a game in Minnesota. My partner was a guy named Mike Preet. He was fantastic. But I could think about Mike Maimone and Tim Hernandez, who did Post Serial, and that show today would hold up. It was so creative, the comedy they did. And as happenstance is, I'm doing a game one night, and Al Michaels is great friends with Rush Limbaugh, and Rush comes into the truck, and he says, Mike Maimone says hello to you. And I'm like, what? He goes,
WABC?
Mike Maimone says hello to you. I go, how do you know Mike Maimone? He goes, he's been my engineer for about 20 years. Yeah. So of course I got back in touch with Mike, and the station was really a powerhouse back then, and it was hard to get on the air and stay on the air, and then you were inspired by the work that other people were doing inside the station creatively, the music shows, the news shows. So it really just gave me the foundation for when I got to the professional world that I was going to be able to at least know what to expect.
It was, we just kept churning them out. I mean, I precede you. I was from the mid-'70s and all, early mid-'70s, and then it just kept going on and on and on, and then you handed it off, as you were saying, to Laurie, and on and on.
Who also had a great career.
Yeah, and then came Mad Dog Steve Torrey. Right. Steve Torrey, who works with on Mad Dog Radio there on Sirius, and for years was on WINS doing sports every morning. I always hear Steve on there. So it's quite a legacy. The station really turned people out on and on, and it's great that you always remember your roots like that, and that always willing to give back to the students of today. Anybody that contacts them, and that's always so nice. Anybody have a Fred story or a question for Fred?
I don't think there's anybody here from my era, other than Dan.
Any questions for Fred? If you weren't at this morning's gathering, Fred answered a lot of questions from the audience, some very interesting ones about the technology that he's helped introduce on the air. Those of you who are big football fans, I'll just pick one out in particular. We won't bore everybody with all of them, but one in particular. Are there football fans here? Do you watch football on TV? Those of you know the first down marker that is now in yellow that signifies where the runner or the pass needs to reach to get another first down for the team, and it's the guy that helped put it on the air first at ESPN, right? Is that where that was? Tell that little story, because it's an interesting one.
Well, I think it was 1997, it was the summer of 1997, and a bunch of scientists that were funded by Roy Disney worked out in Mountain View, California, right near the Silicon Valley. They came to us with someone who had worked in TV operations for Fox Sports, and they said, look, we have this ability to virtually put lines on the field. we train your camera lenses, we map it to the field, and we can pretty much put this line anywhere. And they came in with the tape, and it had a bunch of lines on it. And I always say it, I was really pretty skeptical. I'm like, there's a lot of lines on a football field. Do we really need another line? And my boss at the time was great, and he said, look, I think it's worth a shot, but it's your show, and if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. So I went home and I thought about it. I'm like, well, we should at least test it. So we had preseason games, and we set up a separate mobile unit just to do the test of the 1st and 10 line. And we modified it. We made it gold. We made it 1 line and all these other things. And then, the first time I saw the test, it was like, well, this is a home run. This is going to change football. And it obviously did. But it was something that, again, the first time I saw it, I didn't see it in the incarnation it is right now. But I wasn't really sure about it. But I think you just have to keep an open mind to things sometimes. And if you can test it without having to put it out there for people to judge before you can judge it, that's always a safer way to try to get things done.
It's such a part of watching a game now that when you attend one in person, you're looking for the line.
That'll be there soon. They'll figure out a way.
They'll figure out a way to do that. I mean, when you're watching now during a game in the snow, there are fewer and fewer due to domes, but you now have the capability of blocking out the snow, and we at home can still see the hash marks and the yard lines that they can't see at the field.
Yeah, so this will be my 30th season doing NFL football games. I've had 1 game in the snow, but for about 10 years, we would test anytime we were in a northern city outdoors in December. We would, as part of our rehearsal, we would lay down the hash marks, the numbers, and the yard lines in case it would snow. And I've never really had a blizzard game where it would really be awesome. I had 1 game in Denver where there was probably like 1 inch or 2 on the field and it worked. But yeah, that was something that we really look forward to doing and really haven't had the perfect opportunity yet.
So all the technology that gets incorporated in these broadcasts, and they keep going forward. Now, besides the yellow line, there's usually a line of scrimmage line, so we can always tell if the quarterback has passed the line of scrimmage before he throws the ball, and all that technology. And there was a question this morning about whether that's affecting that it's so great to watch a game on TV, as to whether that's affecting attendance in the stadium. Is it more fun to watch on TV than it is to go to the game?
It's easier to get home, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure, because you're already home.
It's cheaper to stay home.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Look, the NFL is worried about that, as you would imagine they would be, because the viewing experience has become such. Why spend the amount of money you have to spend to be there now? There's really nothing like being there, if that's your thing. So I don't think you'll ever have everybody staying home, but as the cost goes up, and people's lives become a lot more complicated than they were 50 years ago, those are decisions that get made, and I know there's a lot of concern about that.
And well, there was a time, and I know you would have been involved in Monday Night Football back in those days with the ABC, when they would never schedule a northern game beginning in November. You'd get rid of all those northern cities the early part of the season. Once in a while, they'd have some freak thing in Denver in late September where they might get a little bit of snow, but otherwise, you'd stay in the northern climes early, and the late games were always out of Miami. Usually the Dolphins were pretty good, so it was okay to have games down there, and Los Angeles in those days, or out west. They never have a game in the East late at night, but now they have no qualms out of flexing out games and having you in New England, in December, because the Patriots are usually pretty good. But now, I don't know how that is from your broadcast standpoint, but certainly from a fan standpoint, when they suddenly tell you you're not going at 1 o'clock on Sunday, suddenly you're at 8 or 8:30, whatever it is, that's a problem for fans attending also.
Yeah, in the 90s, once we hit Thanksgiving, I was either in San Diego, Miami, Houston had an Astrodome, Detroit had a dome. We didn't see anything in the North or East or the Midwest, but people then figured out cold is pretty cool on television, and so is snow. And you know what? Why are we not letting these games go on TV? And Is it going to be that much of a temperature difference between 1 o'clock and 8 o'clock? Yeah, the snow, the sun's not out, but other than that, we're talking a few degrees here, and they evolved.
And your poor camera people have to be out there in that stuff.
And Michelle Tafoya has to be on the sideline,
Yes.
yeah. So she's cold. She doesn't like it too much. The camera people, again, you talk about when you choose your profession, they know you're going to be a sports camera person. You're going to work in all kinds of conditions, and they're prepared for it.
Well,
I have a question.
Yeah.
Somehow I recall you talking about this when you came to visit students in the past. The NFL is very popular, all right? You know you're going to get the hardcore fan watching your broadcast. What do you do, if anything, to kind of get the fringe or the peripheral viewers to kind of stay glued and interested to the game? Not in a dog game, but in a decent game.
I mean, our philosophy is really pretty simple. The number one objective is to cover the game. That is the number one objective. So when you're not wondering, hey, why are they doing this when this is happening on the field? So the number one objective, hey, cover the game, make sure there aren't any questions when this game ends, and make sure you've answered all the questions that would have come up during a game that the audience would want the answers to. That's number one. Then the second part of it is try to package it in a way that it's going to distinguish it from what you see on Sunday afternoon or Sunday night or a college game. So it's prime time. It should have that real rich prime time flair to it. And you should be telling as many good stories without getting in the way of the game to keep people's interest and kind of take the helmet off the player and let them know, who he is, or who the coach is, or I think the best thing that Al Michaels does is not only does he call an unbelievable game and he's able to just so perfectly sum up any big moment, but he tells stories about players that other people just don't tell, and obviously the players open up to him, but he's able to weave that in so seamlessly.
I think Neil Marks has a question for you.
So taking you back to when we did the games here at Post, Jeff and me, then you, we did those games at a little, what seemed like a plywood box at the top of the stands, on the wrong side of the field, if you recall. But I thought it was almost the best view I've ever had at a football game. If you recall, we were on the second story, we had to climb up that ladder. Yeah, and actually it just came down about a year ago. It's somehow been hanging on there. When you do the games now, are you in a truck, or are you actually up in the?
Yeah, I sit in a mobile unit. I sit in the back in the day you would call it the Cadillac of mobile units. I guess now you would call it the Rolls Royce or the Maserati of mobile units. I don't know what you would call it nowadays, but yeah, I sit in a mobile unit. It's plush. It's probably got 120 monitors, a lot of big flat screens that get broken up into, more screens. So yeah, but I do make sure that before the game, at some point, I'll go out into the crowd just to kind of, get a sense of what the atmosphere is like tonight, soak it up, give thanks, and then head back into the truck.
All right, do you have any old tapes of yourself from your student days calling football?
I think somewhere I do, but if I do, I know I haven't listened to them in 36 and a half years.
Well, we scoured the station and we couldn't find any.
No, we don't.
However, as you know from your student days, we've been doing these homecomings for homecoming weekend at the station. The alumni take over the station and do that. Neil and I have been calling these football games since the 70s together. You called a game in 1981 at James Madison.
One of the greatest games I've ever seen.
It's probably the most exciting finish in Pioneers history.
In most anyone's history.
Yeah, it was an incredible finish.
I remember.
Post came from way behind in just the last few seconds.
Well, they were down, I'll give it to you. They were down 21 with under 2 minutes to go. James Madison was a 1AA school.
That's right.
On James Madison was Charles Haley, now in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and Gary Clark, who was like a 6-time Pro Bowl wide receiver for the Washington Redskins, who was like a notch below a Hall of Famer, a great player in his own right. So we had a freshman quarterback. We had a freshman quarterback named Tom Earhart, who unfortunately I think transferred after that season because he was too good. But anyway, so we're down 21, there's less than 2 minutes to play, and I guess you can roll that clip.
So here, now I do have to set up the clip like this. It's not your actual
I just set up the
broadcast.
clip.
No, I know that, but but the clip is from the year after. James Madison came here to play post, and it was homecoming. And so because of that exciting finish, Neil and I took the final frantic highlights and made a little pregame package. So what you're hearing, you'll have to put up with you'll have to hear Neil's voice and my voice a little bit on there, but you'll hear Fred's calls of this game from 1981.
Let's go back to Saturday, October 10th, 1981 at Harrisonburg, Virginia. Post is 61 yards away from winning the game, but just 15 seconds remain. Let's pick up the play-by-play by Fred Gaudelli, as heard here on WCWP.
Earhart dropping straight back to pass. He's going long for Capone. Capone chasing it, and it's complete. Capone has it at the 15. He's brought down at the 10-yard line, and he's out of bounds, and that stops the clock with just 6 seconds left in the football game, and the Pioneers have life.
Yes, the Pioneers were suddenly very much alive, but there will be time for just one more play. Again, just 6 seconds left and Post at the Duke's 10-yard line.
Earhart, the quarterback, drops back to pass, rolling left. This is going to be the last play of the game. He stops. He's looking for somebody. He goes to the board. Touchdown! The Pioneers score! I don't believe it. Tommy the Bonus scores his third touchdown of the game. The Pioneers trail by a point, and I just cannot believe what is going on at Madison Stadium. The clock reads 0-0-0-0. There is no time left.
But Post still had the extra point opportunity coming up. Coach Jim Colbert elected to go for a 2-point conversion and a chance to win the game. With no time left, this one play would decide the outcome. Post would win or lose by 1 point.
Again, as it happened last October, here's Fred Gaudelli with the incredible finish.
Extra point attempt. Sabona is wide right. Knox is slot left. Earhart, the quarterback. Rosa and Nucci, the running back. Earhart running right. He's got room to run. He's going outside. And he is touchdown. He's in. He's got the extra point. He's got the extra point. The Pioneers win. The Pioneers win.
Incredibly, Post won it 37-36. Today, these same two teams meet again. This time here.
There you go.
That was one of the most exciting games I've ever seen.
Now, who did you call that game with?
A guy named Mike Preet, who now lives in Boston. He's a big New York sports fan who's had to suffer through his life.
So excited that on that 2-point conversion attempt he yelled touchdown.
Chris Collinsworth does it to Al all the time.
It's not a touchdown. It was a 2-point conversion. I should say this is back in the era before there was overtime in college football, so there were tie games, and one might think that Post would have been satisfied with a tie that day. First of all, it was incredible that they could even compete with James Madison, as you were saying.
Yeah.
So you would think that they would simply go for the extra point kick, get a tie, be thrilled, and get back on the bus and start heading home. But the coach went for 2.
Yeah, Coach Colbert said, hell, this could be one of the great stories in the history of the program, and it was.
So he went for 2.
And Tom DeBonis, who had 3 touchdown catches that day, would have been the forerunner to like Wes Welker, Danny Amendola, little guys, small. And in this game, he played the entire game with a broken left hand. He had a cast on his hand. He had amazing hands. He was first-team All-America that year for Division III. Tom Capone, the tight end, was first-team All-American. I mean, I've done a lot of football games. I'll never forget that game. And the fact that Haley and Gary Clark were on James Madison and we're in this game is unbelievable.
So we thought we'd
that was great. Thank you.
Very good. And for the current guys back here, you heard the excitement. I mean, that's it. You got to create that excitement on the air and get that across. And certainly, you could tell that Fred was certainly excited that day down in Virginia. Anybody else with a story or a question or something like that? This is your one chance to talk to the producer of Sunday Night Football. This is your moment. If you'd like to step forward. Anybody? You're very intimidating. They don't want to. We got.
The students that are here today entering the field and wanting to pursue a career.
Well, I think the biggest thing when you get to college is obviously do as well as you can in the classroom, but you have to get involved well beyond the classroom. So back in, the late 70s, early 80s, we didn't really have a television program. The radio station was a powerhouse. It was doing all the things that, I liked. So I really got involved, with the radio station. And I think if you're in college now, whether it's a TV program, a digital program, a social media program, the radio program, the newspaper, I think all those things are valuable. And if you're not going to do those things and expect to get a job graduating in this field, you have no chance, zero. Because people that are coming out now, I'm looking at my daughter sitting right here, she just turned 16, and she just, wrote and produced and was the anchor in a piece, and she's nominated for an award in Connecticut for high school programs. And they're doing that in high school.
And it's always ironic to me. I talk to a lot of people, and they say, "Yeah, I went to school. I'm a journalism major." And I said, "What else did you do?"
What do you mean? Did you write on the newspaper? Did you do any internships? No. There's not much unless you're a preternatural giant, there's not much we can help you. We can't really help you. It's too late. You are competing against thousands of people who have done all these things already and, are hungry to get into the field. So, a 4.0 is great and it looks great, but it's not going to be enough. You have to apply yourself and get into the field. And those internships, as Pete alluded to, and for me, it was kind of a game changer.
Did you ever hear your dad call football games before? Yeah, see that? So that was great. There was one other thing, and you said it this morning, that you dreamt of being Marv Albert as you were growing up. Marv, of course, the great broadcaster. We all know him in New York from his work with the Knicks and Rangers, and he's still out there. He's still calling games. But it was your internship that started to change your mind, that, you know what, maybe there's something besides, on the air work.
Right, so as everybody can attest to now that you've heard my voice, I didn't sound like Marv Albert, I didn't sound like Al Michaels or Dick Enberg or Pat Summerall, and this was pre-Mad Dog, so how you sounded actually mattered. And I just didn't feel like I had a great voice. And you can do a lot with diction, and I did, and I tried hard to lose my New York accent, and I guess I was a mild failure there, but I couldn't change that, and I really thought that was going to be a pretty tight ceiling, that I wouldn't be able to do the kind of events that I wanted to do. So whether it was, broadcasting the Yankees or the Knicks or the Rangers or Super Bowls or World Series, I didn't feel like that was going to really be open to me because of my voice. Anyway, I took an internship in New York City at that time it was WNEW, it's now Fox 5, and they had a show in the 70s that was the forerunner to Sports Center on ESPN. It was called Sports Extra with Bill Mazer, and Bill was a legendary New York sportscaster. And it was a really small operation. There was a producer-director, there was an associate producer, and me, the intern. So I was cutting highlights. I was helping John Dockery, who was the other co-host who didn't know a lot about hockey. I was helping him with the Rangers and the Islanders, and I got to go on a couple of shoots. And as I was going through this process, I was having a good time. I was really enjoying it. And I was thinking, you know what, this may be really a better path for me because my voice won't hold me back. I get to use all my sports knowledge. I get to use the sports passion. And I could probably take it a little further than I can a broadcasting career. And
you did. You took it a little bit further.
Yeah, I was able to do it. And I started at ESPN. ESPN was 2 years old. And so I got there at the exact right time. And as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, you started in the mailroom at ESPN.
Which is a great place to start.
And they don't then just hand you say, oh, you're pretty good at doing the mail. We'll put you in charge of in those days, Sunday night football. But worked your way up the ranks.
Yeah, the mailroom was great because you get to know every single person in the company. And the way they treat you in the mailroom is all you need to know. Because if they're nice to you and respectful, you know that's a good person. If they're not any of those two things, you know that's somebody that, you know, probably isn't a team player. So that was great. And when I was in the mailroom, I also had to drive people. So whether it was Jim Simpson, who was a great broadcaster for NBC in the 60s and the 70s, who made his way to ESPN at that time, or Dick Vitale, or Paul McGuire, Dick Hauser worked for us for a little bit, the former Yankee manager. You get to be in a car with those guys for at least an hour, and you could ask them as many questions as you want, and they were all extremely helpful and passed on great advice, and it was just a really great way to learn. And not only that, the person whose place I took in the mailroom is a gentleman by the name of George Bodenheimer, who became like #2 at Disney before he wanted to retire at 52 years old. So I followed a great one. And yeah, I highly recommend it.
Very good. Another thing to do for you youngins over there. Any other questions for Fred? Otherwise, we'll wrap this up.
Jeff, I would just give you one second. I'd just like to thank Bill, because really, Bill, you really set the foundation, and
we're the kind of boss every student needs. You don't need a guy patting you on the back. You need a guy kicking you in the butt. And that's what you were doing, and everything you did was right on the money. Mrs. G, who obviously no longer with us, but Mrs. G was one of the wisest people I ever met, and one of the kindest as well.
Remember, you'd walk by our office, you have to talk to Bill. Hey, Mrs. G, good day? Okay, thanks. And you'd walk around. And then guys, as I just mentioned, Dan Regan, who helped me so much, who's still one of my great friends, Cosmo Leone, it was Lori White, it was Mike Prate. It was just a great time and just a great place to learn with a lot of people went on to do great things. So I want to congratulate Lew. I loved your class. It's where I learned about a diode. And Pete Bellotti as well.
Fred Gaudelli. And I want to thank everyone for being here today. That'll do it. That's it for the 2019 WCWP Hall of Fame induction. Thank you, folks.